Hello, I'm Michael, and I'm here to narrate the Wall Street Journal's secret climate conspiracy. The editorial board at the Wall Street Journal writes opinion articles in the Wall Street Journal and selects opinion articles by outside parties for publication. The editorial board is known for its conservative positions, which at times bring it into conflict with the Journal's news division. The Journal is regarded as a forum for climate change deniers, publishing articles by people who reject the consensus position on climate change in its op-ed section. A 2011 study found that the Journal was alone among major U.S. print news media in adopting a false balance that overplays the uncertainty in climate science or denies anthropogenic climate change altogether. The video explores a disturbing theory about a deliberate suppression of climate science, and now we'll delve into the core allegations presented. The Wall Street Journal editorial board members oversee the Journal's editorial page, dictating the opinion section's tone and direction. Every Saturday and Sunday, 3 editorial page writers and host Paul Jiggett, editor of the editorial page, appear on Fox News Channel's Journal Editorial Report to discuss current issues with a variety of guests. As editors of the editorial page, Vermont Celsius, Royster served 1958-1971, and Robert L. Bartley served 1970-2000, were especially influential in providing a conservative interpretation of the news on a daily basis. The video explores a decades-long shadow surrounding the Wall Street Journal's coverage of climate change. The Journal describes the history of its editorials. Its historical position was much the same, as former editor William H. Grimes wrote in 1951. Each Thanksgiving, the editorial page reprints 2 articles that have appeared there since 1961. The first is The Desolate Wilderness, which describes what the Pilgrims saw when they arrived at Plymouth Colony. The second is And the Fair Land, which describes the bounty of America. It was written by a former editor, Vermont Celsius, Royster, whose Christmas article in Hoc Anno Domini has appeared every December 25 since 1949. Contrasts have been noted between the Journal's news reporting and its editorial pages. While Journal reporters keep busy informing readers, one reporter wrote in 1982, Journal editorial writers put forth views that often contradict the paper's best reporting and news analysis. 2 summaries, published in 1995 by the progressive blog Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, and in 1996 by the Columbia Journalism Review, criticized the Journal editorial page for inaccuracy during the 1980 seconds and 1990 seconds. In 2011, one reference work called the editorial pages rigidly neoconservative, while noting that the news coverage has enjoyed a sterling reputation among readers of all political stripes. When Rupert Murdoch bought the Journal from the Bancroft family, he promised Paul Steiger, "What is on the opinion pages will never be allowed to flow into the news pages, and the two must be kept distinct." And while I sometimes find myself nodding in agreement with the comment and commentators, even I occasionally find the views a little too far to the right. In 2016, the Environmental Business Group Partnership for Responsible Growth took out ads in the opinion section that criticized the board's position on climate change. The candidacy and presidency of Donald Trump have split the editorial board and further separated the board from the Journal's news department. As a result of the conflict, some staff, including Brett Stevens, Bari Weiss, Robert Messenger, and Sohrab Ahmari, left the WSJ. After first backing Ted Cruz, the board shifted its support to Trump. According to editors who left the board, this shift was due to Murdoch's realizing that Trump could win the election. In July 2020, more than 280 Journal journalists and Dow Jones staff members wrote a letter to new publisher Almer Lador to criticize the opinion pages, lack of fact-checking and transparency, and its apparent disregard for evidence, adding, "Opinion articles often make assertions that are contradicted by WSJ reporting." Among the pieces criticized in the letter was one by Mike Pence titled, "There Isn't a Coronavirus Second Wave." the editorial board responded that its opinion pages won't wilt under cancel culture pressure, and that the editorial content aims to be independent of the news content and offer alternative views to the uniform progressive views that dominate nearly all of today's media. The board's response did not address the fact-checking issues the letter raised. The video explores a decades-long effort to downplay climate change within the financial world. During the Reagan administration, the editorial page was particularly influential as the leading voice for supply-side economics. Under the editorship of Robert L. Bartley, it expounded at length on economic concepts such as the Laffer curve, and how a decrease in certain marginal tax rates and the capital gains tax could allegedly increase overall tax revenue by generating more economic activity. In the economic argument of exchange rate regimes, one of the most divisive issues among economists, the journal has a tendency to support fixed exchange rates over floating exchange rates. The video explores a disturbing theory about suppressed climate science, and now we'll delve into the political forces that may have fueled this alleged conspiracy. The journal, editorial pages and columns, run separately from the news pages, have a conservative bent and are highly influential in establishment conservative circles. Despite this, the journal refrains from endorsing candidates and has not endorsed a candidate since 1928. Some of the journal's former reporters claim that the paper has adopted a more conservative tone since Rupert Murdoch's purchase. In a July 3, 1984, the editorial board wrote, "If Washington still wants to do something about immigration, we propose a 5-word constitutional amendment. There shall be open borders." The journal's support for the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Act of 2007 broke with conservative publications such as National Review. In June 2025, the board criticized the Trump administration's stance on restricting student visas. In September 2025, the board called the administration's mass deportation campaign excessive and said it violated due process, but supported the Supreme Court's decision to allow ICE agents to use race as a factor in detaining people. In the 2002, the journal was a major booster of the Iraq War and false claims that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. The journal, editorial page has been seen as critical of many aspects of Barack Obama's presidency. In particular, it has been a prominent critic of the Affordable Care Act legislation passed in 2010, and has featured many opinion columns attacking various aspects of the bill. The journal, editorial page has also criticized the Obama administration's energy policies and foreign policy. On October 25, 2017, the editorial board called for special counsel Robert Mueller to resign from the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 United States election, and accused Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign of colluding with Russia. In December 2017, the editorial board repeated its calls for Mueller's resignation. The board criticized Mueller's handling of Peter Strzok and questioned Mueller's credibility. A piece published by the board from a contributor claimed that the investigation would imperil the rule of law. The editorials by the editorial board caused fractures within the Wall Street Journal, as reporters said that the editorials undermined the paper's credibility. In October 2021, the editorial board let former President Donald Trump publish a letter in the editorial pages of the paper. News sources described the contents of the letter as false and debunked claims about the 2020 presidential election. The decision to publish the letter was poorly received by many on the journal's news side. In response to criticism of the journal's decision to publish the letter, the editorial board said the criticism was cancel culture pressure. In 2022, an editorial called a story told by President Joe Biden about a 10-year-old Ohio girl who was forced to cross state lines to obtain an abortion following a rape fanciful and an unlikely story. The piece also accused the girl's obstetrician-gynecologist of having a long history of abortion activism in the media. Following confirmation that the story was true, a note was added to the editorial. Political scientist Omar Shahabuddin Makdoum has cited the editorial board's work as an example of Gaza genocide denial. The video explores a disturbing theory about the Wall Street Journal's alleged suppression of climate change information. The journal is regarded as a forum for climate change deniers, publishing articles by individuals that reject the consensus position on climate change in its op-ed section. Multiple sources. Karen Akerlof et al. Communication of climate projections in U.S. media amid politicization of model science. Nature Climate Change 2, 2012, 648 654. Sean W. Elsasser, Riley East, Dunlap, Leading Voices in the Denier Choir, Conservative Columnists' Dismissal of Global Warming and Denigration of Climate Science, American Behavioral Scientist 57, No. 6, 2013, 754 776, and Clearly Fox, leading conservative newspapers such as the WSJ, provide powerful fora for the promotion of climate change denial. The journal editorial pages were described as a forum for climate change denial in 2011 due to columns that attacked climate scientists and accused them of engaging in fraud. A 2011 study found that the journal was alone among major American print news media in how, mainly in its editorial pages, it adopted a false balance that overplayed the uncertainty in climate science or denied anthropogenic climate change altogether. That year, the Associated Press described the journal's editorial pages as a place friendly to climate change skeptics. In 2013, the editorial board and other opinion writers vocally criticized President Obama's plan to address climate change, mostly without mentioning climate science. A 2015 study found the Wall Street Journal was the newspaper that was least likely to present negative effects of global warming among several newspapers. It was also the most likely to present negative economic framing when discussing climate change mitigation policies, tending to take the stance that the cost of such policies generally outweighs their benefit. Climate Feedback, a fact-checking website on media coverage of climate science, determined that multiple opinion articles range between low and very low in terms of scientific credibility. The Partnership for Responsible Growth stated in 2016 that 14% of the guest editorials on climate change presented the results of mainstream climate science, while the majority did not. The partnership also determined that none of the 201 editorials concerning climate change that were published in the Wall Street Journal since 1997 conceded that the burning of fossil fuels is the main cause of climate change. In the 1982 and 1992, the journal published numerous columns opposing and misrepresenting the scientific consensus on the harms of secondhand smoke. A 1994 opinion article said that the anti-smoking brigade relies on proving that secondhand smoke is a dangerous threat to the health of others. Science is invoked in ways likely to give science a bad name. The health effects of secondhand smoke are a stretch. The board opposed and misrepresented the consensus on acid rain and ozone depletion, but later recognized that efforts to curb acid rain through cap-and-trade had been successful, a decade after the Clean Air Act amendments. The editorial board has targeted policy efforts to curb pesticide and asbestos use. The video explores a decades-old story of alleged manipulation within the Wall Street Journal's climate reporting. Paul Jiggett, editor-in-chief; James Freeman, assistant editor; Daniel Henninger, Dorothy Rabinovitz, Jason L. Riley, Peggy Noonan, Kimberly Strassel, William McGurn, Mary O'Grady, Elijah Finley, Joseph Sternberg, Kyle Peterson, Kate Bockelder Odell. The video begins by exploring the alleged hidden efforts to downplay climate change. Brett Stevens, Joseph Rago, Mary Kissel, Claudia Rosett, Joe Morgenstern, Mark Laswell, Manuela Holterhoff, Robert L. Bartley, Robert Messenger, Robert L. Pollock, Vermont Celsius, Royster. The journal won its first 2 Pulitzer Prizes for editorial writing in 1947 and 1953. In 1980, Robert L. Bartley was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for editorial writing. In 1983, Manuela Holterhoff was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for criticism for her wide-ranging criticism on the arts and other subjects. In 1984, Vermont Royster was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for commentary. In 2000, Paul Jiggett's column Potomac Watch won the Pulitzer Prize for commentary. In 2001, Dorothy Rabinovitz was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for commentary for articles on American society and culture. In 2005, Joe Morgenstern was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for criticism for reviews that elucidated the strengths and weaknesses of film with rare insight, authority, and wit. In 2006, Robert Pollack won the Gerald Loeb Award for commentary. In 2011, Joseph Rago was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for editorial writing. In 2013, Bret Stephens was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for commentary for incisive columns on American foreign policy and domestic politics, often enlivened by a contrarian twist. In 2017, Peggy Noonan was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for commentary for rising to the moment with beautifully rendered columns that connected readers to the shared virtues of Americans during one of the nation's most divisive political campaigns. The Wall Street Journal quietly published an internal memo suggesting a coordinated effort to downplay the urgency of climate change.